Right, we're back with Chile, and we're on to the spods. We found all the spots and everything, and love them or hate them, as we've briefly touched on this morning with the marker floats. Spods sometimes come into the same category: carp scarers or carp catchers. From the minimal to the maximum, what's it all about?
Well, it's quite simply one of the most devastating ways of delivering bait at all ranges. People think that it's a tool for belting it out over the horizon, and it's not. You can bait up at any range, and the advantages are you can deliver small items at range. Obviously, that's the one. But you can also put different sized items in them and bait at any range. If you ever pick up a catapult and fire some pellets, some 14mm boilers and some 18mm boilers out of a catapult, the pellets will go 10 yards, the 14mm boilers will go 20, so it delivers everything to the spot.
So you can get a good mix of bits and pieces into one container basically, and deliver it to a precise spot. Yeah. Okay. I mean, probably confusing for perhaps the beginner to the sport is that there's just such an array of different sizes, shapes, colours, some with holes in, some with no holes, some here with bits that come out of them. I mean, what's this all about?
Right, I mean the spod, it's in its basic form, they're all pretty much the same. But obviously some have got holes in and some haven't. I prefer the ones with holes in, because I can use a fairly stodgy mix, and as the spod hits the water, the water's being forced through those holes, ejecting the bait from the water. The blanking cylinder,
which is this little gem,
and it fits inside, flush inside the spod itself. Now, if you want to use things like maggots, very, very small items, very tiny pellets that are liable to fall out of the spod when you're casting, you can pop the blanking cylinder in, as Martin did then. You can fill that up with maggots and away you go. None of them are crawling out the holes, and that's what it's there for. Okay.
I mean, so this really looks to me like two spods in one.
Yeah, it's three actually. You get a half blanking cylinder with that. Again, you can put maggots in the front, in first, and then put some pellets in top on the top of it. But it delivers everything to the spot.
And if I'm right, and I am, the cone actually comes off and you can change the colour?
Again, same as the marker float setup. If it is quite vital to see where that spod's ejecting the load at a range, and you can change the cone, the nose cone on it, along with the conditions.
Okay. Primarily to deliver food. I mean, they're all, although they're completely different in their makeup or their styles or whatever, they are actually all the same aerodynamic shape. Built to deliver nice and streamlined.
Yeah, they have an inherent weight in the front of them to kick off with, even before you put the bait in, to ensure that the spod flies straight and true.
Okay, so like these nose cones basically.
Yeah.
Okay, and for those that haven't used spods before, and there are going to be people out there, at the end of the day, once they've landed in the water in this manner, they actually turn upside down. Yeah. All the food items are falling out of the spod, and you've got a visual cone basically, which you're casting your spot to your marker or the area you've marked up. So the marker float goes out, the spod that can then go out and deliver the food across the top, and then you can get into the fishing situation. I've watched a lot of anglers over the years, and I mean, one particular thing that springs to mind is that, I mean, there's a water in Oxford which is a very, very busy day ticket water, and without fail, 5 o'clock in the morning, you can hear bucket lids being ripped off, people stepping forth into the morning dawn, and they're all piling as much food as they possibly can in. It is a disease, isn't it? It can be a disease as well.
It's a double-edged sword. A lot of people, I think the problem stems from lack of confidence, Martin. They'll fish through the night, they haven't had a bite. So therefore, they'll reel the upbaits in, reposition them, and put another load of food out there. Casting repeatedly with a spod is a great way of putting a lot of bait out at whatever range, but it's also a very good way of topping up a swim. Now, carp can be very evident over a baited area, and you're not getting bites. Maybe they're not feeding hard enough to elicit a take. Very often in the middle of the night I'll get up, I'll set my alarm clock for 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning, and just put 2 spods out back on the spot. What it does, it just freshens the spot up, and it hopefully creating a more competitive feeding scenario.
Okay, but how much do you put in? I mean, like I say, I see a lot of anglers, they turn up with a couple of buckets. Now, there must be 5 to 10 kilos in each bucket. Now, they either go there with the purpose of, I am going to put all of this in, you know, but where do you draw the line, and where do you start tactically thinking about how much and when, more importantly?
Okay, well, let's go back to that water in Oxfordshire. I think that's a good example, and what you're saying happens all the time. People come up, rip the buckets off and put it all in the pond at the same time. Although I've probably been labelled with a bit of, you know, I'm someone who likes to use a lot of bait. I think bait is probably the largest part of the carp fishing jigsaw puzzle for me. You know, if I can get them feeding confidently, all I need is a sharp hook out there and I know I'm going to catch them. What I tend to do, especially on busy day ticket waters, as you just mentioned, is to just put out a small amount of bait. Be happy with the spots I'm fishing. We've gone through the marker and set up and the way we use it. And then maybe between 10 and 20 spods. And then through the night, I'm topping that up. Just a couple of spods every now and again. And that seems to work very, very well on those sort of waters. I don't think you need masses of bait out there. I think that's working against you from the get-go on that particular kind of water.
Okay. And what about when you're in a catching scenario? I mean, you basically what you're saying is you're fishing for that one bite. You're testing the area.
Yep.
You're looking for a reaction to it.
Yeah.
When you start catching numbers of fish, are you feeding continuously as you're catching?
After every fish.
After every fish.
And then in periods of, you know, I'm happy that my rigs aren't tangled. I'm happy that they're out there fishing correctly. But after every fish, certainly, maybe half a dozen spods, maybe more. You know, it all depends how many fish are in the water as well, Martin. You know, if you've got a lake, you know, a 20-acre lake with 500 carp in it, then you're going to get away with a fair amount of bait. But you're right, get the bite first and then you can gauge where you're going to go from there. But yeah, you need to be continually topping it up, but not mindlessly, you know, 10 spods every 15 minutes. Just gauge it through the night and certainly after every fish.
Do you think about what you're putting in the spod in comparison with perhaps the depth of water you've got in front of you, or indeed with the topography of what you're fishing over?
That's fair. I mean, that is quite difficult. Again, we'll go back to the gravel bar we were talking about earlier on. If I don't want round baits in there.
Right. Why?
Because everything's going to roll away and disappear.
Okay.
You know, if I'm going to fish on top of it, that is. If I'm fishing at the bottom, then it doesn't really matter because everything's going to end up down there. The thing is, I mean, a spod, the only limit you've got is your own imagination as to what bait you can actually put in the blooming thing. You can literally bait up with anything. What I'm looking to do is create something that is working. Things, you know, using various oils and dips that will float to the surface. When that floats to the surface, that's carrying tiny particles of bait with it. And invariably, as it rises through the water column, little bits are falling off of it back down to the bottom again. And that's going on all the time. So that's what I'm looking to create, something that's really, really active. You know, a bed of boil is quite one-dimensional, to be honest with you, and I'm trying to get as many dimensions into that baited area as I can.
Okay.